Hello everybody, welcome back to Access Blockbusters Pod. I hope you are having a fantastic day and that you've had a fantastic week, and welcome back to another episode. I hope you guys are ready to enjoy, sit back, relax, and let's talk about some movies and things that are going around in the movie news space. Now, as you guys may have seen, this is a pre-recorded episode, so I recorded this a little bit ago. Hopefully the information, all the dates and things that I've been going through and we'll be discussing will still be up to date and accurate, and hopefully, I'm pretty sure that all the information that I'm going to be talking about here will all be up to date. But just in case it's not, that's a heads up just to let you guys know. If you haven't seen the podcast episode I did a couple of weeks ago, where I kind of discussed I'm going to be away for a little bit, but I wanted to record some episodes of the podcast post MCU Phase 4 rewatch just to have, some more just more discussion going on the channel while I'm away. Wanted to always make sure to have content up. That's really the reason that we're pre-recording these, but hopefully we'll be back to a regular schedule of live podcasts and just discussing the news and everything that's coming out. But again, just wanted to have some episodes out so that we can discuss, some topics that are interesting to me, and I hope will be interesting for you as well. So guys, before we get into it, make sure to subscribe to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel. That's where all of these podcasts are hosted, as well as on Spotify as well. So if you'd like to give this a rating, again, I might have said this before, apologies if I'm reiterating, but there was some sort of malfunction with my Spotify account that was associated with the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel. Not a big deal. Just had to re-upload all the episodes onto a different platform. It looks exactly the same. Everything should be completely consistent. It's just that episode 1 is missing, I believe. But other than that, 2 through 23 or 24 or something like that, 26, 27, I don't remember when it ended, up until when I had to re-upload all the episodes. But they are all on Spotify now, and everything should be good to go from here on out. So again, guys, if you haven't subscribed, please make sure to do so, and let's get into it. So today, I wanted to talk about a little bit of a narrative that I've seen going around with regards to 2024 and the movie release schedule. So obviously, up until this point, there hasn't been a smash success of a film in the 2024 box office. And a lot of the narrative that's been going around has been really the failure of a lot of these movies that have been coming out. I remember recently, The Fall Guy came out, a movie that I quite enjoyed. And I kind of thought, well, with Emily Blunt and Ryan Gosling, you have these two superstars, especially Ryan Gosling with, coming off of Barbie. You would have thought that this movie would have made a ton of money, but it kind of notoriously amongst the movie pundit circles failed spectacularly. And you have all these other movies that you kind of thought would be doing huge numbers and didn't really do a lot of the numbers that you thought they would do. Even a movie like Dune Part 2, which was spectacular, some people thought even that would do even better in a different time. And so I think a lot of the narrative that's going around is that 2024 is kind of spelling a little bit of a disaster for the box office. Again, before we've even seen a film like Deadpool and Wolverine hit the cinema screens, and that's a film that I'm predicting and hoping will make $1 billion. This is all before, big movies like Deadpool and Wolverine, big movies like Moana 2, for example, are coming out. So we just don't know what the rest of 2024 holds in store for us. But it is, I think, interesting to think about that narrative, and it's interesting to talk about it. And if you've read the title of the podcast, you're going to know that I'm not even going to be talking about 2024, but more talking about 2025. And there's a very specific reason for that. But first, just sticking with 2024, I think it's really important to keep a couple things in mind, and one is just enormously important. And like with most things in life, but also with things like news and movie news especially, context is key, right? I think not having context is a very dangerous thing to do when you're discussing things like, is this the end of movie theaters? Now, again, is the box office so far for 2024 spectacular? No, absolutely not. But there are a couple key components that I would like to posit here for, to kind of think about as we look ahead to 2025. First of all, I think this is the absolute biggest thing, the writer and actor strike. This happened last year, it happened late last year, and basically shut down productions for every single big project that was going to come out in early 2024, and now everything's being kind of pushed to the second half of 2024, and then into 2025, which we'll talk about again in a second. And I think that is just something you can't deny had a significant impact in what we're seeing so far. I mean, while the MCU has been struggling, they've been putting out still massive hit after massive hit. Just I guess now kind of mixed in with some more mediocrity. So you have, you have your Marvels, yes, and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumanias, but you still have your Black Panther Wakanda Forevers. You have your Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness and your Spider-Man No Way Home, almost $2 billion. So Marvel is still a big part of this. And it is just worth noting that Marvel has not released a film so far in 2024. Their first one will be Deadpool and Wolverine. And again, Madam Web is not a part of the MCU proper, and it was a terrible film by all accounts. I haven't seen it, and I don't really intend on it. So that really isn't a factor in the Marvel equation. So you haven't had this big Marvel film, you haven't had a big Star Wars film or a big DC film really in 2024 thus far. So I think that is really important to keep in mind because, again, these are big tentpole films. By May, you usually have at least 2 MCU films, and you have had none this year. So there's that. And even still, by the way, I think that, there, even with the declining enthusiasm, I think that, again, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 proved last May that even amidst all the complaints and things about the MCU thus far, a lot of it, very genuine and valid, that if you put out a movie that is generally liked by audiences and critics, then it's going to do well. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 made over $800 million. So I think that is worth pointing out, that you can talk about things like superhero fatigue and comic book movie fatigue as a factor in why the box office is lagging, and you might point to that being a sustainable trend. I think that it's also fair to say that a film like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, if it came out right after Endgame, which I think it was originally supposed to, it would have probably made $1 billion, absolutely. But again, these are kind of what-if scenarios, and we're dealing with the reality that there have really been no big kind of tentpole Star Wars, DC, Marvel films that have come out in the last 6 months. So there is that. The writer's strike, the actor's strike have pushed a lot of things backwards. There is, I think, the secondary factor is just the general fatigue, though. I think it is fair to point that out, of these kind of big movies. Although, again, you have a Dune Part 2, for example, that just exceeded all expectations, box office and critic and audience reception wise. But I think it's fair to say that, yeah, I mean, some of these bigger films, people are maybe not as enthusiastic about. And that kind of leads to a tangential point as well, which is that we are still living in the wake of pandemic movie viewing habits. And I think that there are people who are much less enthusiastic about going back to the theater to see movies. And if you see something that is less than spectacularly received by critics and by audiences, then I don't doubt that that people might be more hesitant to go out and see them again. So I think that is also a factor that you have to keep in mind as well. So all of that being said, yes, 2024 might be a warning sign for movie theaters and for product. I think there's also the discussion to be had about the short release windows that the studios are doing, but I think these things can all be remedied as well. So again, we're not here to talk about 2024. We're here to talk about 2025. And the reason why is because I want to point to the fact, I was just thinking about all the movies that are coming out in 2025, but not just the movies themselves, but sort of what the movies that are coming out represent. And I feel like, look, I mean, it's completely possible that 2025 happens and all the movies that come out, because obviously there will be some delays, but let's just assume that all the movies that are slated to come out in 2025 do actually come out in 2025. And there's a great possibility that, sure, yeah, like all the movies come out and then they all fail and the box office continues to decline, and then we have a bigger discussion at the end of that year. I want to have that discussion in 2025, though, because the way that I see it, I'm not saying that 2025 is destined to save the theaters and save the movie industry and all that kind of stuff, but I do think that because of these extenuating factors, right, that have been going into what makes 2024 so far maybe a little bit lackluster in terms of movies, I think that 2025 is pointing towards brighter futures ahead. And I think that it is worth looking ahead to that year just to kind of reassure ourselves that, yes, 2024 has been a little bit slow. There have been some really great movies. I really enjoyed The Fall Guy this past month. I really enjoyed Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes as well. But it's just worth looking ahead to see that, yeah, let's reassure ourselves the world isn't falling, the movie theater industry isn't collapsing, because I do think that there are some really positive signs moving forward. So what I've done here is, let me get to my screen here. I've compiled a list of just looking through, again, as of mid-June, early to mid-June, looking at the release calendar of 2025. So some of these dates might have changed by the time that this comes out. Hopefully not, though. It's only been, I think, a couple weeks since I'm recording this. And I am going to look at I think some of the most important films, and some of these films are films that I'm looking forward to personally, but I think that these are going to be important films in the blockbuster space that are hopefully going to revive interest in movies and revive the sort of box office rigor that we were used to, around circa 2019, where we had films like Aladdin making $1 billion, Endgame almost making $3 billion, Spider-Man Far From Home making almost a billion, or making over $1 billion, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, whatever you think about that film, making over $1 billion. I think that's sort of the goal that we're hoping to return to. And I think 2025 is going to be a critical year where hopefully a lot of these things happen. So again, understanding that not a lot of these, I shouldn't say not a lot. Some of these movies will definitely move release dates. In fact, I'm looking at one in particular that, we'll talk about in a little bit. But for the most part, I'm hoping that a lot of these films keep their release dates moving forward, as long as IATSE and the VFX artists don't go on strike, which again might shift some things here and there depending on how long that goes, if and when it happens. But for now, let's just take a look at the 2025 release schedule and see what we got here. So if I haven't highlighted a film here, and I'm not going to talk super in depth about every single one, really just talking about each one, insofar as I think it's going to be important for the 2025 movie release calendar. If I don't mention a film, chances are I forgot about it or just it wasn't on my radar. Please make sure to comment down below, though. Let me know if I've forgotten something or if I didn't really spend enough time talking about a film that you think will be important for the 2025 movie release calendar. So number one is kind of interesting. It's Paddington in Peru. And there's a specific reason I put this on here because let's face it, I mean, Paddington is a franchise that has two films that are just critically beloved, right? Paddington 1 and Paddington 2, I believe, have 99 or 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I think that Paddington 3, it has a great chance to kind of match that, match that same tone that's been brought by the first two films. But it's really not necessarily Paddington in itself. I mean, Paddington is not really going to make $3 billion at the box office, right? It's sort of a film that is critically and audience beloved, but it's not a big film in the same regard as a Marvel or Star Wars is. However, I'm putting it here along with the second film on this list because I want to just point out the fact that we are starting out January really strong. This film comes out on January 17th. And for what it's worth, January and February had always been thought of as kind of trash months for the movie industry to kind of put out their lesser IPs and the films that they thought wouldn't be doing as well at the box office. And let's be honest, less critically acclaimed and films that they thought just would tank with critics at the box office. But and while January and February might still have that in 2025, I think it is worth pointing out the fact that you have a film like Paddington 3 lined up for January 17th, and you have a film like Mickey 17 on January 31st lined up. Now, the relevance for a film called Mickey 17 is that it's directed by Bong Joon-ho, who, of course, directed the Academy Award-winning film Parasite. And I think that when you have the prestige and the acclaim that kind of director and that kind of film has, along with a bona fide star in Robert Pattinson, obviously the Batman, but he has also done a bunch of Oscar caliber work as well. I think that that's a really good sign heading into 2025, that you have these two films that are looking to sort of be critically beloved in January. I think that's a really good sign. Now, February, again, is one of those months that, you see a lot of films that, frankly, might be, critically panned. However, there is one big film in February of 2025, and that is Captain America: Brave New World. Now, again, Marvel tends to shuffle its release dates and whatnot, so it wouldn't be altogether surprising to me if, Captain America moves to May and Thunderbolts moves off of May and stuff like that. But, let's just assume that this is the calendar. Captain America: Brave New World coming out in February, taking that Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania slot from 2023, excuse me. That may not bring up great memories for some people. I happen to enjoy Quantumania, but I understand that most people didn't, and it didn't make a lot of money at the box office as well. But I think that, Captain America: Brave New World is the second MCU film coming after Deadpool and Wolverine, and it signifies the big shift that Kevin Feige has made back to quality control, right? Because Captain America: Brave New World, from all accounts, had been mostly filmed, I think. But Kevin Feige looked at what he saw and said, no, this needs a lot of work significantly. And now you have things like Giancarlo Esposito coming in as a big character, I think, maybe a significant character in a minor role. You have Thunderbolt Ross, you have the leader, you have Sam Wilson. I think that this film has the makings of a very significant and high quality film in the MCU after everything that it's gone through in its production. I think that that's really exciting that the MCU is announcing its return in 2025 after Deadpool and Wolverine in a big way, because 2025 is going to be big for the MCU. It's going to be releasing 4 films and I think 2 or 3 shows. Not because that's what Kevin Feige wants. I believe that he came out and said that they are really trying to do just, three movies and maybe 1 or 2 shows a year from now on. It's really because of the not the COVID strikes, the writers and actors strikes. And I think that is, that's a reason that 2025 is going to be a little full, but perhaps that's going to be a good thing if all of these films or most of these films are of the high quality that we're hoping that they are post, Bob Chapek being fired and post restructuring under Bob Iger. So we will see. March is exciting as well because you have on March 7th a Ryan Coogler, Michael B. Jordan film that is yet untitled. So that's always exciting. And these films, again, he did Creed, Fruitvale Station, obviously the 2 Black Panther films where Ryan Coogler did, that Michael B. Jordan was in as well. I think that, again, it's exciting to see that in the early months of 2025, you have films that look to be maybe even Oscar contenders, Mickey 17 and the Ryan Coogler film, Paddington, I'm not sure. But, you have these films that are looking to be awards caliber films as well. Now, I'm not really going to talk about much in terms of, TV shows, although I want to bring them up just insofar as to say that it's going to be a great year for entertainment in general. And there are tons of season 2s and 3s and 4s that we don't know about that are going to come in 2025 after, 2024. I did just want to bring up a couple shows, though, and I'll talk about more at the end, just to say that, in those blanks as well, it's not just about the movie theaters, it's about the industry as well, that you're going to be seeing these really high quality streaming shows. And it's not, we're kind of going back from the model of throw everything against the wall and see what sticks. You're going to have these shows that I believe will be really high quality as well. And in March, we're going to have Daredevil Born Again. I just wanted to highlight that. Again, it's not going to be in theaters, which we're talking about the movie theaters here. But I do think it's important to kind of point out there that that's going to be coming up because, it just kind of rounds out the entertainment landscape in 2025. Now, in March, we have also Snow White on March 21st. And look, say what you will about Snow White and whether or not it needed a remake, although it seems like Disney is just, bent on remaking literally everything that they have. So whether or not it needed a remake, I don't think is the right question that you want to ask Disney, because their answer is we're just going to remake everything. And say what you will about, how the first image looked with the dwarves, which I think looked crazy, and the CGI looked just really terrible. And I don't understand people who dislike Rachel Zegler. I know she made some comments about, some things that people took the wrong way or whatever. I frankly haven't been paying that much attention. I just know that she was phenomenal in West Side Story. And say what you will about, Gal Gadot not being the best casting for the witch, or the evil queen, or whoever the villain is. I haven't seen Snow White in a long time, I'm going to admit. These live action remakes, though, make a lot of money. And again, I know I'm pointing to a couple examples that are pre-pandemic, but you have Aladdin, which made over $1 billion, and you have The Lion King, which made almost $2 billion. And, since then, I think you've had The Little Mermaid, which surprisingly made a decent amount of money, like $500-600 million, I believe. And so you can't deny that this movie, while it may not make the kind of money that an Aladdin did, unless it's, quite good and everyone loves it and all that kind of stuff, which again is always possible. It's also equally as possible that the movie is panned and everything like that. But this movie should have an audience, is my point. This movie should have an audience that will make, a couple $100 million, if not $300, $400, $500 million. And I think that is a big deal, right? When we're talking about the box office landscape and the movie landscape of 2025. So I think that film in itself, whether or not you like the remakes, I talked about this in a previous podcast episode where I was discussing, what the point was of these live action remakes. And that's a whole separate conversation that we can have. But just to say that this is an important film that's going to come out in 2025 for, just if nothing else, just to kind of, pump up the box office for a little bit. Then we head into May, because I think April for the most part is pretty empty. But we head into May, and starting off right at the beginning on May 2nd, that is the typical Marvel slot, the May release window. They have Thunderbolts, which is coming out. Thunderbolts asterisk, I should say, which I think is a crazy title just to have the asterisk. I don't know why you did that. Whatever. Apparently there's a big reason for it. I think it's still a little bit silly, but May 2nd is Thunderbolts. And now, May is sort of the unofficial beginning of the summer blockbuster release calendar. And I think one of the interesting things that gives me hope about this is that Marvel has enough faith to put a film like Thunderbolts with, again, with known quantities, right? Florence Pugh is a star. Sebastian Stan is great. You have Julia Louis-Dreyfus. You have David Harbour coming off of Stranger Things. So it's not like the actors in Thunderbolts are unknown, but it's rather the concept and the style of the film that I think will be a little bit different from other MCU projects, and I think that that's actually a really good sign because they're putting a film like Thunderbolts in that prime slot. It shows that they have really a lot of faith in the film. Hopefully, because who knows, maybe they'll put Captain America 4, which is a very known property, even with Sam Wilson, and then they'll move Thunderbolts to later. But I think that for now, just having Thunderbolts there really shows that they have confidence in this IP and in this property, and I think that that is a really good sign, actually. Just thinking back to previous Mays, you had Guardians of the Galaxy, which was obviously a very known commodity, made $800 million. You had, I think Doctor Strange was in March of that year, I believe. So yeah, it was in March. So nothing came out in May of 2022, I believe. No, it could be, no, actually, no, Doctor Strange 2 did come out in May. I'm sorry. I was getting my dates mixed up. Yeah, so Doctor Strange 2 came out in May of 2022, obviously made $900 million. Going back the year before, nothing happening in 2021. And then 2019 was obviously Avengers. 2018 was Avengers. 2017 was Guardians 2. 2016 was, I believe, Civil War. Yeah, I believe Civil War was that. So just to say that slot is historically very important for the MCU. They put their heavy hitters there, and I think that it's a really good sign that they're putting Thunderbolts there. It believes that it kind of shows that they have faith in this product as well. So that's a really good sign. Not coming in, I'm not doing a ranking or anything like that, but the next film that I wanted to talk about is Mission Impossible 8, formerly titled Dead Reckoning Part 1. I think that they're moving away from that title because Dead Reckoning Part 1, Dead Reckoning Part 2, bit of a mouthful, but May 23rd, Mission Impossible 8. Mission Impossible 7, just on a personal note, was my favorite movie of 2023. I thought it was fantastic. I know a lot of other people thought that some of the other previous films were a little bit better. That's totally fine. But I just, for me, it was the theatrical experience of it all. And that's something that, you hear someone like a Tom Cruise talking about all the time with his Top Gun Mavericks and Mission Impossibles of the world. But I do think that is really important, right? To highlight the fact that you have these films that are really experiential events in the theater. And I have no doubt that this being the quote unquote last Mission Impossible film that, Tom Cruise is going to go for some crazy things, and we'll see, we'll see. And I'm just really excited about it. And I think that while the Mission Impossible films have not made $1 billion, they consistently make about $500 million, I believe, maybe $600 million. Hopefully this movie, just being the combination of great and action-packed and just hitting the right, kind of tone after the first few months of the year, kind of capitalizing on that momentum. I'm hoping that it does make the most that any Mission Impossible film has had thus far. So I'm really excited about that, and I think that that'll be a great cap to the franchise as well. Also in May on May 30th is the Karate Kid film with both Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio, which is super interesting. I know Cobra Kai fans, there are a lot of Cobra Kai fans. I personally haven't seen the show, so I can't really comment on that. And then I'm sure that, there's a lot of nostalgia for the original Karate Kid. And I remember seeing the new reboot when it came out in 2011 or 2010 or something like that. And it was enjoyable. Obviously, I was much younger and I didn't really have a grasp on whether or not it was a good movie or whether I liked it. But I think there's some intrigue here if they put out a good film and, you have this kind of crazy, weird crossover going on. I think that there's a decent chance that, this film does well as well, heading into the summer months. Now, speaking of summer months, on June 6th, you have Ballerina, which is a spin-off of the John Wick franchise. And each John Wick film has gained more momentum going forward in the box office. Each film has gotten more money, and I think that that's a really important thing as you have Ballerina, and I believe Keanu Reeves is confirmed to be returning as John Wick in the film, so hopefully, I don't know if they're going to market that or not, but hopefully that'll be a little bit of a boost as well. And I think I want to point out kind of the key here is that kind of going forward until the end of July, you have basically a big movie coming out every single week. And that's really important because, yes, Ballerina may not make, $700 million, but what you have is each week a new film trying to really top the last one and momentum. And in a world where that happens, I think that the real winner here obviously is the studio. are the studios, although they'd hope to make more money, obviously, in those release windows with, less competition. But, the bigger, I think it's the saying that rising tides raise all ships, right? I think that will really benefit the studios, but I think that the big winner is us as consumers of these films. I think that we're just in for a real big treat here as we go along into the summer. Now, the next week, June 13th, is we have a couple movies coming out. Pixar's Elio, which I know very little about, but it's Pixar. They're going to be coming off of Inside Out 2, I believe, and hopefully Inside Out 2, I haven't seen it yet. I'm very excited about it. Will be a big film. Kind of returning to the roots, returning to form for Pixar. And then also on the same day, you have How to Train Your Dragon, the live action version, obviously coming off of a, astoundingly great animated trilogy, one of the better ones, one of the more mature ones that you've seen out there. And I'm excited to see what they do in live action. I frankly don't know what it's going to look like with the dragons and everything like that, with Toothless and Hiccup and everything. But, I'm excited. I think that it should be really great. And a couple weeks after that, we have Jurassic World 4, which is really interesting because the last one came out, in 2022, and then 3 years later, you have another one with a new cast. However, it's really exciting because I think the cast, right, is something to get excited about. You have Scarlett Johansson and Mahershala Ali. We'll talk about Mahershala Ali in just a little bit. Are going to be anchoring the cast, and I think that is reason alone to be super excited about the film as well. Coming up next on July 11th is a really big film for the movie industry because this signals the beginning of what could either be, I'm not going to say the savior of the box office heading for the next 10 years, but I'm going to say it's going to be really important that it does, well critically and, modestly financially, and that's Superman on July 11th. Now, if Superman doesn't make, $500 million at the box office, I don't think that that's a bad sign because I think what's more important for Superman is that this film does well critically because it's going to be launching the DCU going forward. And if the DCU can maintain any kind of success akin to the beginning of the MCU, where yes, Iron Man, I think, made about $500 or $600 million, not the most. Incredible Hulk didn't make the most, but then you had Iron Man 2, which made a lot more money, and then you had Thor, Captain America making even more money until you had the Avengers, which made $1 billion, almost $2 billion, in fact. That's the kind of momentum that you want to begin here in 2025 heading forward. I really hope, I'm super excited for Superman. I think that James Gunn and David Corenswet, Rachel Brosnahan, Nicholas Hoult, they're all going to do a great job. I really hope this is a strong start to the DCU because whatever you think about Man of Steel, it made a lot of money. It made $600 million or something like that. It wasn't received that well critically, like 56% or something on Rotten Tomatoes. And so I think it's super important for the industry, and I have a great deal of hope, seeing something like Peacemaker or the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special or Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, that James Gunn will really pour his heart and soul into this Superman film. Really excited. Just a couple weeks later, July 25th, The Fantastic Four, right? You have another MCU project that I have a lot of hope for, that it's directed by Matt Shakman, who directed WandaVision, my favorite Disney Plus MCU show and one of my favorite MCU anythings of all time, Infinity Saga included. I think that, again, it's just continuing the momentum, right? Which is what we want. Now, between July and October, it's actually a little bit barren. I mean, there are some films here and there that are coming out. But again, I think that, for the most part, what I would hope is that ending the summer season, you have this kind of wave of momentum going forward that I think that, you'll see some other films pop up between August and October. We're just really talking about these big blockbusters for now. But again, you'll have some films that will make a decent bit of change as well, and I think that shouldn't be overlooked, in the grand scheme of things. But there is a little bit of a gap here, and so I think that if any film is kind of looking for a spot here, for example, there are a bunch of films that don't have release dates yet that I'm sure will have release dates in the coming months that are filming right now. I think the Knives Out 3 is a prime candidate to come out in maybe the August-September window. I remember Knives Out 2 Glass Onion came out in August or September, I believe, of 2022, which was really exciting. It came out in November, sorry. But it was in the fall season at any rate. And so maybe that's a great window for Netflix to kind of grab a 1 month release window for Knives Out 3, make a bit of money before having it go be on Netflix, which I think is really exciting. And again, there are probably going to be a bunch of other films that are coming out in that window as well. October 10th is Tron Ares. Tron is a franchise that is now spanning 2 or 3 generations, honestly, with the original in the 80s, I believe, with Jeff Bridges, and then Tron Legacy about 15 years ago, and now Tron 3, Tron Ares. So we'll see what this franchise has left to offer. You have Jared Leto, who is a polarizing figure in Hollywood, but what can you say? He has an Oscar, I believe, and he puts his all into these films. So you really just got to take that for what you will. But I think that there is reason to be excited about another Tron film. And at the very least, it'll be something that hopefully will get, a little bit of an IP boost as well in October. November 7th is a film that I frankly just don't think is going to come out in November 7th, 2025, let alone 2026 or even ever, but it's Blade. Look, with everything that's been going on with Blade, and we're not here to talk about the production problems of Blade or anything like that, but I think it's just worth pointing out that this film has a very spotty and troubled production, and who knows if it's going to release on November 7th. So hopefully by the time that we reach November 7th, 2025, which is over a year away, but it'll be here before we know it, that, we have enough momentum riding from 2025 that Blade will just kind of be a blip, and if it's good, it's good. If it's not, and we can kind of move on from there. November 26th, 2 films that could be both very big. Wicked Part 2, just depending on whether or not Wicked Part 1 was any good, and Zootopia 2, which obviously could be great given the success of the first film. The one worry with a Zootopia 2 is that it might have come out a little bit too late, given that the first film came out, I think, 2016, so it was a long time ago, almost 10 years to the day that the first film came out, but still chance to make a lot of money. Five Nights at Freddy's 2, December 5th. Say what you will about the film. I personally, as a big fan of the games, not a huge fan of the film, but, it made a lot of money in the hundreds of millions of dollars range. I think 300, 400, 200? I can't quite remember, but it did make a lot of money. And so we have a sequel now, and that's, hopefully it'll improve upon the first film as well. And then sort of the big cap off to 2025 is Avatar 3, which, look, you can say all you want about the other Avatar films, and you can say everything you want about how it's not a relevant franchise. I think both films, the first film obviously is the number 1 box office film of all time, and the second film, I believe, also made $2 billion. So these are just, visual marvels. Now we'll see whether or not this third film has anything, substantial in store that's different and that's better than the second film, because the second film kind of had this underwater technology that it was kind of, look at how much, better it is than what we saw in 2009 with the first Avatar. But still, I think that just riding the momentum, this has to be a $1 billion film if it's anything close to good, because I think people will at least be curious about it as well. And that caps off the release calendar for 2025. Now, again, just worth pointing out, there are tons of films that are being filmed right now that will have release dates in 2025. So this list will only grow. I'm sure that a couple of films will be moved off of 2025 and into 2026. It always happens. It will happen again. But I think that you just kind of have to take a big picture view of everything that's going on here, and say 2024 had a lot of things going for it that kind of prevented this from happening, and 2025 we'll have a lot of those films that we're going to release in 2024 move to 2025, as well as the fact that you have all of these amazing films coming out that should really boost the box office as well. It'll be about the quality of these films for sure, but it'll also be about the way that these films can kind of buoy up the box office in general. And I will say, I have a list of some TV shows as well that will be coming out in 2025, and while these TV shows are not, going to be released in theaters for the most part, I don't think so. I think that it is, again, a sense of rising tides raise all ships, in that if these shows are good and well received, it kind of just creates a better perception around the franchises that they're a part of. So, of course, you have your Daredevil Born Again coming out in March. You have Ironheart and I believe Wonder Man also coming out in 2025, if not 2026. But Ironheart as well. Hopefully hopefully that's a good show as well. It's being retooled and re-edited, I believe. So here's hoping for that. You have a show called Welcome to Derry, which is based on the It franchise. So two big films. Now it's a TV spin-off show, which is great. Stranger Things 5 is going to be a massive show. Massive show. The end of Cobra Kai, the end of The Handmaid's Tale. So again, you have all of these different, shows and entertainment. And I think that they're all really pointing to just, I think, a fantastic year for movies and television as well. And so just to kind of close out my thoughts here, I know it's early right? We're halfway through 2024, and you might be wondering, why are we even looking to 2025? I think it's because I wanted to kind of, jump on the conversation about, oh, the movie industry is failing and everything like that, just to say that, look, there are a lot of things that went wrong, at the end of 2023 and the beginning of 2024 in terms of the movie release calendar. But we kind of have to take a step back and say there were extenuating circumstances. The films that we have been getting this year are pretty good for the most part. Again, no huge tentpole films so far, but Deadpool and Wolverine will change that. And then in 2025, we're really going to see the fruits of what the movie industry has been working on post-strike. So again, I'm really excited for the next, year and a half, because I think starting with Deadpool and Wolverine, we're really going to kick it into high gear. And I'm super excited about that. And I hope you guys are as well. So guys, that'll do it for this episode of the Access Blockbusters Pod. Again, make sure to subscribe, give this video, this podcast a like, rate it on Spotify. Make sure to share it. Subscribe to the Access Blockbusters Pod. Subscribe to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel for more content. And I will see you guys in the next one.